Hello and welcome to the show, Maryanne. Maryanne, I'm so happy that you decided to come and join us today. Maryanne has a really cool story because she is not actually over the finish line yet. So, on this show so far, we've only had people who have already completed the entire process from foster to forever. And Maryanne graciously agreed to come on the show, even though she's not there yet, because I think it's really valuable for listeners to hear what it's like when you're right there in the middle of it, what's going on, how it feels, and all of the above. So I'm really, really happy to talk to you today. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. I have so much to share. Honestly, I think being stuck in this like unknown limbo is a unique kind of torture. So, um, yeah, there's no shortage of emotions or feelings here.
That's right. That's right. Now, do you have any other children? Like, do you have biological children or any other children? Okay.
Nope,
And as I understand it, you have a sibling set. Is that
I do.
correct?
I do.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I have to hear all about this because
Yeah.
my husband and I actually signed up for that. We were willing to do a sibling set. And
Yeah.
then we ended up just getting two different single children. But
Yeah.
I often think like, oh my God, I'm so glad I didn't do a sibling set because
Yeah.
it would be so overwhelming to have two at once. That
Yeah.
said, I think it's incredible to obviously to keep the children together. That's the
Yeah.
biggest thing. And also for them to have each other and maybe takes the burden off of you in some
Yeah.
ways. I don't know. So tell
Yeah.
me about that decision and like how did you come to fostering?
Yes, this is a very unique. Well, actually, I don't even think it's unique because I feel like I hear similar situations happen all of the time. But what happened was I started fostering and I started fostering teenagers. So my first placement was a 16-year-old and her 4-month-old baby. So it was a mutual care placement. She did not stay very long. She was with me for about 2 months. And then we kind of had this like very silent period for a while. And then she really came back to my life. And we're very, very close now. So,
Hmm.
very involved in her life. She doesn't live with me, but I see her a ton. After her, I had a 13-year-old girl for about 7 months, very tumultuous 7 months. After that, she left on a not so great note. We had been talking adoption, and some of her mental health and diagnoses and attachment issues just would not let her get over that hurdle. So it was really heartbreaking for me when she left, because I would have been there forever, so I would have kept taking it. But at the end of the day, like, our my friend always says that we want to get these kids exactly where they want to be, and if that's not with us, then you know then it's not with us. So,
Right.
after she left, I had a really close friend. She is a foster parent and she's amazing. She is in her 70s and she only takes young, like newborns. So
Hmm.
she had a 5-month old at the time. And I had known him since he was about a month old. I did respite for her often because she lived up the street. And she asked me, she said, it's looking like things are not going towards reunification here. I am obviously not an adoptive option since I am, because of my age.
Hmm.
Uh, so would you be willing? He knows you. And
Mm.
I was kind of like, holy crap. I was grieving this path that I was on with a different child. I'm a single foster parent, so it's just me. So there's no one to be like, hey, Maryanne, take a beat. Let's not
Right.
do. So
Yeah.
I'm, like, well, I love him. They're looking for somebody that, they're potentially looking for somebody that they can move him to. And okay, why not? So I started taking him like unofficially, like on the weekends and whenever I could. I work a full-time job from home mostly, but I would take
Hmm.
him whenever I could, just to kind of grow that relationship with him and um,
Sure.
see kind of where things would go. And so eventually he did move to me, um, as a it's really hard to say this now, but they kind of framed it as a foster to adopt situation. But I did not know the extent of how little had been done on his case until he was in my home and I was listening to hearings and talking to GALs and realizing that no parent had even been adjudicated at this time. So there was no
Wow.
goal of adoption. There was no, I mean, there was no progress had been made on his case.
Wow.
He moved to
Okay, let's back up just a little bit just so that the listeners, GIL, what's a
yeah,
GIL?
GAL, guardian ad litem.
GAL.
Yeah, so that is the child's attorney.
I see.
So yeah,
So
so
there
when I
was not an appointed attorney for the child.
he had an appointed attorney, but parents did not have attorneys. Parents had not been
Okay,
attending court. There was really no progress that had been made.
I see.
So when he came to my home, it was April of 2023, and he was 8 months old, and nothing had been done legally.
So the adjudication is when they determine that yes, this child needs to be in foster care. Is that correct? Am I right about that?
It's really hard to define what it means in dependency and neglect court because it's not, there is no guilty or innocent, right? There's just
Right.
a charge, and there's does this child is this child dependent and neglected, basically.
Okay.
And there had been no determination. I mean, there had been, enough that they were keeping him in foster care, but there had been nothing done within the court to
Uh-huh.
assign treatment plans, to do anything to start that reunification process. Like
Right.
nothing
Right.
has
And that's very unusual. I mean
very,
that yeah.
very.
What state are you in?
I'm in Colorado.
Okay. So I was yeah, because I'm thinking California and I'm thinking like that just wouldn't be allowed, I don't think, to
Adjudication
happen.
should happen within the first 3 months.
Okay.
And I'm
Mhm.
going to tell you right now, he just turned 2, and we still
Mhm.
haven't adjudicated one of the parents.
Wow. Is
So
it
it's
because they
really
can't find the
no,
parents?
no,
Like,
no. They know where
okay.
they are. They know where they are. It's just, and they're involved. It's just that it has not followed any of the normal legal pathways.
Okay.
So it's
Okay.
been quite a mess, honestly, and
Uh-huh.
emotional whiplash for sure. So he came to me, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, like we're on this road to adoption. Like
Mhm.
like I thought, this had all been done, that they had changed the goal from reunification to adoption,
Right.
like it would be a few months. Like, I usually in the state of Colorado, you have to have a child for 6 months before you can adopt. So I knew that we'd at least have that timeline. But I was beginning, and I mean, foster parents, like we're not experts on the legal side of things.
Right. Of
So
course.
like, I've had to learn on the fly this whole time, and the more I've learned, the more I'm just like, oh my God, nothing has been handled the way that it should have been.
Mhm. Mhm.
So, he comes to me at 8 months old, and we're just adjusting. I got laid off like a month after he got placed with me. So
Whoa.
yeah, so that was a big, oh gosh, what am I gonna do? I Here
Mhm.
I am trying to find a daycare, and now I'm like, guess I don't need a daycare for
Yeah.
time being. Because I'm a single parent. So again, my one income.
Oh,
Um, Luckily, I found something. I started within 6 weeks. I started a new job. He started daycare. We're rocking
wow.
and rolling. It's
Amazing.
July. Yeah,
Mhm.
he turns 1. And we're just moving along, moving along. And then I get a call in August and said, "Hey, guess what? He has a sister. She was
Wow.
just born.
Mhm.
So they are 13 months apart. So they placed her with me
Mhm.
for about 4 days. It was over Labor Day,
Okay.
and then what happened was the intake was not done well for sister. So there's a TPC hearing, which is temporary placement hearing. And that's basically where, we'll go to court and they'll say, okay, this child needs to remain in foster care, or whatever reason that we removed the child has been mitigated, whatever it is.
Sure.
And they ended up sending sister back to one of the parents. So it was a whirlwind week
Mhm.
and a half of, oh my gosh,
Mhm.
you're newborn and you already have a baby. And oh my gosh, you need all the newborn things because you did not have brother as a newborn,
Right.
scrambling. And then also, oh my God, I'm going to have 2 babies and I'm single, and she can't go to daycare until she's at least 12 weeks old. So what am I going to do?
Yeah.
So
Yep.
who's going to help me? My mom's booking a flight to come out. My friends are like, we'll be there. I'm like, I work from home. It's like a whole cluster. I'm like, and what am I doing? In the back of my mind the whole time, I'm like, what am I doing? But like, my gut instinct is like, no, like that's his sister, and full sibling. So,
Yes.
I was like, that's his sister. And a part of me was also like, oh my God, a baby girl, right? Like,
Hmm.
I wanted to see her. I wanted to see what she looked like. Did she look like him? And
Right.
all that. So and wow, like I could be there with her from the start. Like I didn't have
Right.
brother at the start. So,
Right.
it was just a very different experience. It was also very
Hmm.
interesting too, because I was like, oh my gosh, like, what does this mean for brother? Like, this must mean, like this isn't going, like we're going down this road, right? We're going down this road of he most likely will be with me long term.
Right.
And now I'm going to have two and I'm single. And like, what does that mean for dating? What does that mean for
Yeah.
like having my own biological kids someday? Like, I'm going to already
Hmm.
have two kids. So it was a lot. But then she
Wow.
went back, and then and then it was just like, okay, here we are back to one. And, honestly, those 4 days, with a newborn, it was, tiring, and I did not feel attached to her when she left. I was kind of just
Uh-huh.
like, whew. Honestly, I want to say it was a little bit of relief because
Yeah.
it was a lot. It was a
I
lot.
can
And
understand that. Yep.
I wanted to do my part for her and for him, but like, that wasn't my decision to send her back. So like,
Right.
I did my part. I stepped up, but like part of me was feeling, okay, wow, like we can get back to our groove, like a
Right.
lot had been
Yes.
going on,
Right. Right.
it's,
I just want to pause for a moment and just acknowledge how incredibly just life upending something like that
yeah,
must be and is. I mean, I know what it's like just for the one, right,
yeah,
at a time to bring one home, but
yeah,
then to juggle that and then have a new one in the mix and then try to
yeah,
just emotionally like be like, okay, we're gonna do this, let
yeah,
alone logistically and like all the other things that your
yeah,
brain is thinking about all at
yeah.
once. But just handling that, and then it's like 4 days later, it's like, oh no, okay,
Never
yeah, and
mind.
that is foster care.
Oh
Like
my God,
it's just
100%
such a roller
cluster.
coaster and for everyone, and you really have to be someone who's very resilient and able to just
And have a
roll
good
with.
therapist.
Yeah, yeah, I was thinking, especially for you as a single
Yeah,
person,
good
like
support system.
I'm so glad to hear that you do have a support system of friends and your
Yeah,
mom, because like how do you do it? I mean, I once I became a parent, I was just like single parents, like I bow down to
yeah,
single parents because it's so much.
it's a
So
lot.
anyway, I just want to like put that
Thank
out there. That's a
Yeah,
lot.
I could not do this without the amazing support network that I have. And I don't have any family that lives locally. So
Mhm.
it's really just this foster community of friends that I've built that have been like, yeah, if you're going to do this, do it. We're here. And, I think
So
they
it
all have the same level of crazy that I do. So they're like, yeah, we're going to do this, and
yes.
my family's like, are
Yes.
you sure? And
Right. Right.
so it's kind of this like, my family's like, what are you doing? And then I have these people that are like, hey, if you're doing this, amazing, we'll help you. If you're not, also amazing. Like
Right.
whatever you want to do. So,
I
at the end of the
love
day,
that.
I can try, and that's all I can do. So,
Right.
but
How
yeah,
did you get connected to this foster? Because that's one thing I really wish I had going through it. I didn't really know anybody else who was fostering
yeah,
to adopt at the time or even just fostering. And it was difficult going through those years without having anyone else who had that same lived experience that I was having.
yeah.
Um, I had friends, I had support, but nobody who was really going through it. How
Yeah.
did you find that? Did you make a conscious effort to build that or?
Yes and no. Like, a lot of this came to be when I had my second kiddo. She was 13 and she was really, really tough.
Mhm.
Really emotionally draining. Just, it's so different, the teenagers versus babies, right? Like,
Mhm.
they're
Mhm.
both hard, but the emotional toll that it comes with older kids, and and some of the behaviors and things that they know and things that they understand and the things that they
Right.
tell you and the things that they do are just like
Mm-hmm.
bigger. It's
Sure.
less of the like physical labor and more of the emotional toll.
Right.
So I really, really needed support. And I have a great group of people, and it's really hard to pinpoint how we all became connected. But
Mm-hmm.
I think some of it was looking for respite and then meeting people and then meeting friends of friends.
Mm-hmm.
But ultimately, I fell into this group of women as the only single provider. Everyone else is married, but like they just kind of we just have this amazing community. I love them all. I found like my soul mate best friend in this group, and she
Oh
is
God, that's
really,
awesome.
oh my God, I could cry talking about it because at the end of the day, if whatever comes of foster care, like I met her, I met my person. So I couldn't do any of this without
Oh,
Emily. So I'm gonna cry because
oh, that's so beautiful. I love that. Shout out to Emily. We love
she is,
you. Thank
she
you.
is my rock. We joke that that she's my sister wife, and I borrow her husband for house projects sometimes. But she is the best, and she had some tough teens, and now it's kind of funny because we're both in this baby phase together. She
Mm-hmm.
has a 16-month-old and a 8-month-old, and then she also has a 10 and 11-year-old and a 19-year-old. So like, now we're in this baby phase together, and it's just a completely different, like, hard. And
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
but it's just we're so aligned and like what is going on and our personalities and the things that like really trigger us and emotionally like drive us and why we keep doing this. So she's my person. If I didn't have her to connect with every day over the littlest things or the biggest things, like I
Yep.
couldn't do it. So
Amazing.
yeah, and she was like, yeah, we're gonna do this, we're gonna figure this out, like take sister. And I did, and then she left, and it was like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
we're gonna continue on and see what happens. And the interesting thing was once sister went home, um, part of me was terrified because I was like, well, what does this mean for brother? Because I really did not
Right.
think the reunification or the return home was going to last. I also did not think it was safe. I think that there were a lot of missteps by the county, and so it was really scary.
Uh-huh.
And
Uh-huh.
um, turns out they ended up. Oh my gosh, sorry, my cat just jumped across my screen. Turns
That's
out
okay.
that they really pushed brother home in the next 2 months after that. So with very very little visits, with zero transition, they
Wow.
sent him home in November. So sister was born in August, brother got sent home in November. Um, she was
When
about two
you
and a half
say,
months old.
again, just for the listeners, when you say with very little transition, you mean like there weren't like visits ahead of
Nothing.
time so
There
that
was
he could
nothing.
get used to it? Nothing.
Yeah, I honestly felt like there was some retaliation against me because I had been so vocal about being scared about him being sent home.
Uh-huh.
Um, there were visits weren't happening. Nothing was done to show sobriety. There was just a lot that had not taken place, and it was about to be Thanksgiving time, and they wanted me to do all these transports, and I was like, it's my holiday too, and
Yeah.
I'm happy for them to have these visits, but like I need some professionals involved here because this is a lot on me. And
Mm-hmm.
so they got pretty upset and they dropped him off one night and said he was leaving the next day.
Oh my God.
So he left on a Friday, and I got the kids back on Tuesday, both of them, and I've had them ever since. So
Whoa. What
I got
happened in
another,
those days? Like
yeah,
what happened? And
I
and how
don't,
did you,
yeah,
yeah, just talk about that.
it was a wild 3 days.
Mm-hmm.
So he left on a Friday, and I called everybody that was near and dear to us that knew him, knew me, and I said, like, come over, come say goodbye. I'm packing up his things. It honestly felt like a wake, like a funeral for someone who was living.
Mm-hmm.
We all
Mm-hmm.
cried and hugged him and took pictures and
Oh my
played
God.
with him, and my house was full, and it was emotional. And when I had to hand him over, it was like soul crushing.
And
So
how old was he at
scared.
this point? How old was he?
He was probably, I think he was 14 months.
Okay.
He'd been
Okay.
in
So
foster
he
care
doesn't
for
know what's going on. Like
no,
he
no,
has no concept of that all of a
no.
sudden he's not going to see you
Yeah.
anymore.
And
Yeah.
meanwhile, like his first foster mom, Sharon, um, she was heavily involved with him even after he came to me. So we call her Grammy and
Mhm.
Mama, and so he never lost any of those attachments, and he was about to lose all of us, and
Yeah.
there was no attachment where he was going. Like there, it just hadn't
Right.
been built yet. There hadn't been time.
Right.
Um, so we were really scared for him. And 3 days later, on Monday, I get a call that the kids are back in foster care. And do I want them back? And of course, yes, like bring me my babies.
Yeah, like immediately.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
now, please. And we had to go through all this red tape and hoops, and basically, the team was still pretty upset with me for how vocal I was, but I'm not gonna lie. At the end there, I was already losing the worst thing, and I was
Yeah.
already going through the worst thing. I was scared for him,
Yeah.
and turns out I was
Sure.
right. They didn't want to hear that, but I was right, and I understand that legally they did not have the evidence. They can't go off of a hunch. I understand
Right.
that, but like deep down, like my gut knew that this was
Yeah.
not safe, and
Right.
it wasn't, and it didn't last. And I want to say like it did not last very long, thank goodness,
Right.
because I don't know what would have happened if eyes weren't still involved.
Yeah. Yep.
It
Yep.
was really scary. So I got them back right before Thanksgiving. Sister was about 2.5 months old, and brother was about just almost 15 months. And I've had them ever since. So nothing has changed really court wise. We're still going through the motions. It's looking more and more like is this going to be a long term thing?
Mhm.
I don't know though. Another complexity of
Yeah.
this case is that it's an ICWA case. It's an Indian
Uh,
Child Welfare Act case,
uh-huh. Yeah.
which adds a lot of extra um, requirements. And
Can,
so,
can you explain to the listeners
yeah,
what that is if they don't
yeah,
know?
I'm
Yeah.
not native. So,
Okay.
I'm not the preferred placement for these kids.
Right. Yep.
Preferred placement would obviously always be kin, and then
Mhm.
a native foster home.
Yes.
And unfortunately, I haven't been able to find either one of those. There are very, very few native foster homes. I think
Mhm.
they said the tribe has like one, and it's
Mhm.
not even in the state of Colorado. Um,
Mhm.
and then kin hasn't been an option. So they're okay with me being the placement while they make active efforts to find kin or a native foster home.
Right.
Very difficult. So, it's also, we're getting to the point now where a brother has been with me for more than half his life. He just
Right.
turned 2. And so there's a very, very strong attachment there. And, there have been some things that have happened in the last few months and on that brief return home that have caused some really big behaviors and trauma for him.
Mhm.
And so, like, I just really think it would be detrimental to move him at this point.
Yes.
Um,
Mhm.
a lot of attachment issues come from before a child turns 2
Mhm.
and only get exacerbated as they get older. So, and the more moves that are made and the more big changes in the lack and loss of attachments. So, I really do think his team is aligned on minimizing that as much as
Mhm.
possible, especially for sister as well, because, she's had some back and forth too very early on. And
Mhm.
um, she's doing really great. She's an angel baby. She's very go with the flow.
Mhm.
Very, very sweet. She's 11 months now. Um, and brother is more of my he's also a toddler, so I had to say I don't know.
Yeah.
It's really hard to separate toddler and trauma because some
Right.
of the behaviors are very similar.
Right.
So um, it's it's definitely a busy time in my life right now, and
Right. Oh yeah.
yeah, and it's just me. So, and I've
Yep.
also kind of been on the fence about exploring some of my own fertility stuff and whether I'd like to have my own child biologically
Mhm.
um, using a donor. And so, like, it's kind of like, when do I do that? Am I waiting for this to be finalized, or am I going to be waiting forever? Like, do I just go
Right.
ahead and do this, or and then dating with 2 kids that
Uh-huh.
might not be mine forever, but they might. Like,
Right.
it's a
Right.
very difficult place to be. I live in the day to day as much
Mhm.
as possible. I try not to plan too far ahead in the future. Every milestone I get to see is celebrated, but it's also bittersweet because I don't know if I'll see the next birthday
Yeah.
or, the next thing. Um, it's a really hard line to walk. I feel very selfish sometimes of never wanting to have to say goodbye again, but also knowing that if I don't, what they're losing. Um, it's a very hard juggling act, and
Yeah.
emotionally, like, of course, I don't ever want to not be in their life, but it's a very real possibility, and it's also a very real possibility that they won't go anywhere. So
Right.
preparing for both outcomes while doing the day-to-day parenting and the services and my job and running a household and daycare drop-offs and pickups and grocery shopping and doctor's appointments, it's a lot. It's a lot.
It is a lot. I am just, I feel it so much, like everything you're saying, and I had a partner to do it with.
Yeah.
So I feel you so hard. I'm exhausted for you. And like, I also just, I want to just like say, it's amazing what you're doing. And someday you'll look back at this and be like, man, how the hell did I do that?
No,
But like,
no.
you do it. You
Yeah.
just do it, and somehow you get
Just like
through it.
waiting for like the text message or call of like something else crazy,
Yep.
we're getting to the point
Yep.
where our sister's about to be a year old. I'm like, is there going to be another baby? Like, I can't take anymore,
Right. Yeah, no kidding.
Or
Uh-huh.
like,
Yep.
what else is going to happen? What else
What
could
would you
happen?
do if there was another baby?
I don't know. I really don't know. Like, I don't.
Call Emily.
Yeah, right. She's full up at this point. She's got 5 kids. Like we're
Wow.
full. We got a lot of babies between my friends and I. Uh,
Wow.
but it's just I don't even know. I don't know what I would do.
Yeah.
It's really hard. I love their relationship. I love seeing them together, and I love it was a hard adjustment for my little boy because it was just me and him for a long time.
Sure. Yep.
And he went from overnight becoming a big brother, and
Yep.
then she left, and then she came back, and it
Yep.
and
Very confusing. Yep.
yeah, super confusing, super
Yep.
confusing. It's no wonder he struggles the way that he does. And I just had the conversation with Emily this morning. I'm like, I don't know if I'm the best thing for him. Like
Hmm.
I want to be, and I do my absolute best, but like sometimes
Yeah.
I don't know what else he needs, she's like, well, you're his mom, and he loves you, and you love him, and I'm like, I know, but there's so much attention and one-on-one and services and things that
Hmm.
in place for one child, and now I
Yeah.
have another one that is about to enter toddlerhood, and what will she need? And
Yeah.
it's a lot to juggle, and it's a lot to say, well, what is trauma? What is in utero experience?
Yeah.
What is temperament? What is my home and my parenting? And
Hmm.
it's a lot. So
Yeah. Everything you're saying, it's so complex. It really is. And another complexity is that as they get older, into toddlerhood and whatever, things start to emerge, right?
yes,
So other things can start to emerge, special needs or different, different things, and then that becomes another thing that
yeah,
you will deal with. And I actually often thought to myself, on the positive side, it's really nice that there's a lot of eyes and there's like a lot
yes,
of services and there's a lot of people involved because, for instance, my daughter was diagnosed with autism at like 4.
yeah,
And that was a wonderful thing that she was diagnosed so early so that we
yeah.
really knew
Service,
how to start getting her services and like relating to her and doing our own education and all this
yeah,
stuff. Whereas a lot of girls in particular go undiagnosed until they're, 9, 10, 11. And then at that point, they've had a lot of trauma around feeling like they didn't fit in and what's
yeah,
wrong with me and all of this stuff. So I do
100%.
think
Yeah,
that
they both
that
have been
part of it
involved.
is good. Yeah.
They both have been involved in an early intervention and
Mm-hmm.
PT and OT and
Yep.
speech and anything that I can get them. Like I'm like, give me all the services, give me
Yes, me too.
every
Yep.
resource because I want them to have everything at their
Yes.
disposal. Um, And I mean, same with myself. I mean, I do weekly therapy, I have the support network. Like, we can't do this in a silo. Like, you
Totally.
need so much. And yeah,
Yep.
it's a lot to manage, though. The appointments and the
Yes. Oh
referrals
my
and the
God. Yep.
approvals and yeah, the
Making sure you
follow-up.
fill out the form every time they see somebody, you have to make
Yes,
sure, at least in LA it was like that. Every time you go to the doctor, do you have the form? You got to have the
yes,
doctor fill out the form and, like
yes.
all the stuff because
And the
everything has to be logged.
documentation and
Yes.
yes, this just all of the extra things that parents don't have to do if they're not foster parents.
Right. Totally.
Getting
Totally.
approvals for everything. I can't
Yep.
make a lot of decisions, so I can
Right.
push for
Going
things.
out of
Yeah,
state. If you want to go on vacation somewhere, it's like you got to get that
yeah.
court
We just got
approval.
back
You
from
have to.
vacation, so it's
Nice.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
that took a while. I was like, I'm not sure if they're going. Are they able to go? They went. And
Right.
you're trying to plan these things, and it's
Yeah.
it's a lot. It's a lot.
It is.
So
I often say it was like a master class in living in the moment, like because you just
100%.
have to learn like we have right now. We're
I
together
know.
right now.
I know. I
All is
sometimes
well. That's all you
sometimes
can.
that's all you can do. And I'm laying there in bed at night and I'm thinking about, like, what if, I just walk
Yeah.
into their room and I'm like, they're sleeping and they're under my roof and they're
Hmm.
safe and they're okay and I can hold them and I can touch them and I can kiss them and I know where they are and they're safe. That's the big thing.
Yeah.
They're safe. Um, yeah, I
Yep.
had it's there's some stuff that you see as a foster parent, and there's definitely some secondhand trauma, and what could happen, and you hear stories, and
Hmm.
it's scary. And I actually had a friend text me today that a little baby that she knew is actually the sibling of her adopted son, passed away over the weekend, and
Oh.
she
Oh
had him
man.
for a few weekends to help out, and then he had gone back to biomom and
Hmm.
passed away unexpectedly. And
Oh my gosh.
that's the kind of stuff that, like, keeps you up at night,
Yeah.
when you send kids back and don't
Right.
know if the stability continues and don't know what's happening. And,
Right.
when I said goodbye to them in November, I had no idea when I would see them next, if I ever would. And it
Right.
happened just so that it was 3 days later. So,
Unbelievable. Wow. What was that like when you you must have just
oh
been
my
like,
God.
"What?"
It was emotional whiplash to the max, and I don't think I had truly felt like the full weight of him leaving before I
Mhm.
got the call that he was coming back, because
Right. Yep.
I was just so numb all
Right.
weekend. I
Yep.
was just like, I didn't know what to do. And at the time, my very first foster daughter was living with me briefly. They were waiting for her apartment to get ready. So she and her daughter were living with me. So I was so happy that I had kids around still
Mhm.
to, like, mom on, because, like, I didn't know how to go from being a mom to not being a mom.
Yeah.
And it was so nice to have her around and have, like, because there were toys around and I was like, what do I do? Just, like, get rid of them all? So it was nice to have them around still and have her play with them, and, like, because I was about to just, like, purge my whole house because
Right.
I couldn't see it,
Yep.
and before I could do that, he came back.
Wow.
So it was wild. And then I had them for Thanksgiving and the holidays,
Yeah.
and it was just such a different holiday time than I thought I was going to have.
Yes.
Yeah, it was
Wow.
very confusing and also relieving and sad at the same time, and also like, holy crap, what could have happened?
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
and also, how did this happen? Like, how did this happen so quickly? Like,
Right. How did it happen that quickly? Did they go there and see that there was something unsafe happening in the home or what,
um,
how did that
one of the
happen?
parents ended up getting arrested.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, and
Wow.
yeah. So, I don't want to share too much. I don't know what I
No.
can and can't
Yeah,
share.
no, no. No
But
problem.
unfortunately, like, yeah, and it was interesting because originally the police had gone there looking for somebody else. And it was just like, oh my God, like, the events that had to happen for
Right.
this to happen so quickly was mind-boggling.
Right.
And yeah, and I will never forget, like, when they dropped him back off at my house that night, and I was just like, where is my baby? And
Yep.
just and just seeing him again and being able to hold him on, I literally had been like feeling like he had died. Part of me felt
Right.
like he had died, you know, like
Sure.
you were grieving someone still alive.
Right.
Um, yeah, so it's been, I'm trying to think, it's been about 9 months since then.
Okay.
So, we're just chugging along.
Mhm.
Every month, every week is like, okay, we did it. Now on to the
Right.
next one, you
Yep.
know?
Yep.
Um,
You want that
yeah,
time to pass in a way because
yes.
and this
Oh
is
my
what
gosh.
was told to me is like, because ours
Yes.
were like taking so long. We were like, why is it taking so long? And
Yeah.
then the lawyer was like, honestly, you want it to
To
take a
take.
long time because you want
Yeah.
to make sure by the time like you've had them for
Yeah.
so long that it becomes sort of irrefutable that like you are not the
Yeah.
right
And
parent for
also,
you know what I mean?
yeah, a lot of what their guardian ad litem will say is like, we want to do this right. And we want to do it right the first
Yes,
time so that if there ever
that's
is an
right.
appeal, like there's no way that this can be turned over.
Yeah,
And so
that was the other thing they said. Yep.
give it time now and let it work itself out. And that's
Yeah.
really hard. It's really, really hard to wait. It's really hard to wait for each hearing. It's really hard for me to
Yep.
listen to hearings. I can't anymore. My friend Emily will listen to them for me and give me the highlights. I
Uh-huh.
can't
When
do
you
it.
say
Like,
listen, you mean like you're calling in and you're
yes, the
virtually like on the
virtual.
call? Okay.
And I just
Yeah.
can't do it anymore. I let someone else listen and give me the notes, the cliff notes, and it stirs up so much anxiety and stress for
Yep.
me, like hearing it. I just like it's like I just want to live under a rock until I have to face it. And just because it's so hard to get bogged down by that stuff. And
Yeah.
I need to do the day to day. I need to do the taking care of them part and not get stuck
Yeah.
in the what ifs and
Right. Right.
the fear. And
Yeah.
yeah,
Court was so hard for me. Like court was always the court days were the hardest days.
yeah,
And back in that this is before the pandemic with my daughter. So we were showing up physically and I went to every single court date and I would be so filled with anxiety like I
yes.
cannot even
Like
describe like
physically, I feel it.
yeah,
Like
like
I feel
PTSD. I had like,
immensely.
oh my
Yes.
God. Yeah, 100%. It
Yeah.
was very, very difficult. I'm wondering, have you applied or do you have de facto status or is that a thing in
No.
Colorado or anything like
I'm
that?
trying to remember what it's called. It's when you become a party to the case, and there's a
Right.
new law in Colorado. The kids have to be placed with you for at least a year before you
Oh,
can.
wow.
And
Okay.
so it's been long enough for brother, but I have
Uh-huh.
not done it just because I don't think that it's going to give me any information that I don't already get. And then
Okay.
also I just think that it would cause problems. It's a very fuzzy thing, doing that because it's kind of like working against the parents in a way. And
Mm,
so like I don't want to do that. I don't want to cause any unnecessary rift. I mean, we
sure.
don't have a very I don't have a very open relationship with them anyway.
Okay.
I really don't communicate with either of them. It's pretty
Hmm.
much all through visitation or
Uh-huh.
caseworker and guardian ad litem, and I think it's just for the best that way. I've tried in the past, and it's just too difficult at this point in time. And I think
Yeah.
honestly, the longer this gets dragged on, and I have a lot of guilt around that too because it makes me feel like a bad foster parent. Um, you know, not
Because you're
wanting
not, uh-huh. Go ahead.
not wanting to have that like partnership with them. And a lot of it is just I'm dealing with some of my own frustrations and
Hmm.
anger and fear and of what these kids have gone through. And
Right.
um yeah, it's really hard. And brother's getting to the age now where like things are going to need to start being explained to him in
Hmm.
more detailed ways, and I'm navigating how to do that. And honestly, right now there's nothing to say because there's no plan.
Right.
So like it's just very difficult.
Right. So the
um
parental rights have not been terminated
no,
yet.
no.
Okay. And are they have they been offered services
Yes,
and that kind of thing? Okay. And are they following up on the services? Like, are
no.
they doing the services? Okay. And how many times has there been a court date um, since they are not following up on the services? Like, do you know what I mean? Like for us,
Yeah,
it was
it's
like
been about
several
6
court
months.
dates. Yeah. So that was around, I think what it was for us, maybe actually 9 months of
Yeah,
them not
actually,
doing their thing.
for one of the parents, it's been longer. For the other parent, it's been shorter. It's also been
Mm-hmm.
different for each kid because of their ages. So, but the only consistent thing is they're consistently not engaging in those services
Aha. Gotcha.
or attending court or being consistent with visits.
I
So
see.
there's a
Okay.
lot that's not happening.
Right.
But then there's so much of the legal process that needs to play out a certain way before anything can happen. So it's not that
Right.
it's not that no one's doing their job right now. It's just that like
Mm-hmm.
things have to play out in a certain timeline. Um,
Yep.
yeah, and unfortunately,
Yeah.
things should have happened faster for brother, but his case was not handled well. I mean, we're on our fourth caseworker for him, second
Mm-hmm.
GAL, second judge. We're about to go to a third judge. So like the turnover is massive. You
Yep.
know, the court docket is so full. They tried to get it the hearing. We have a big hearing coming up in a couple of months, and they tried to plan it for July, but the court docket was so full, it's not going to be until September. So
Yeah.
it's stuff like that that's holding
Yep.
up this
Yep.
process is the
Yep.
docket, and it's the turnover, and it's the amount of cases that these professionals have. And it's just that part of me feels like they're in a safe home, and so there's just like no urgency. You know, there's
Right.
just
Yes.
no urgency because they're not living this life that
Right.
we're living, right? You know,
Right.
so they can
Right.
turn it
They're
off.
fine. Yeah. Yep.
Mhm.
Yep.
They're
Yep.
fine. They're fine with whatever happens, honestly.
Right.
It's a
Right.
number. These kids
Right.
are numbers to them.
Right.
So they're okay. They're okay. They're
Right.
getting paid. You know?
Right.
So their
I
hearts aren't
know.
on the line here. Their livelihoods are not on the line here.
It's so, yeah. And I guess for the people involved, they almost have to, like the social workers and stuff, just sort of detach in that way because
Yeah.
otherwise their heart would
No,
be
I
breaking
know.
every single day, all the time. Like they just have to develop this sort of like hard kind
Yeah.
of detachment. But it's so difficult for the people whose lives are hanging in the balance, like
Yeah.
yourself, who's just waiting and doing everything you can
Oh, yeah.
in service of this child and just but your life is like I'm a person too and I have a life
Yeah.
too and like I've got to get going with my life too and
Yeah.
I'll never forget something that my daughter's appointed lawyer, said in court once that I was just like, oh, thank you. Because you can't say anything, and you're sitting there in the
Yeah.
back. I'm sitting there in the back, and things have been postponed and, postponed and every time there's like some stupid reason why it goes on
Yes.
and on and on. And finally, the lawyer for the county who was representing my daughter was like, Your Honor, this child deserves permanency. She deserves permanency. And I was like, my whole body just was like, oh,
Thank you.
so true. We
Yes.
all do. We all
Yes.
deserve permanency.
Yes. It has been the ultimate test of patience.
Yeah.
And I would not say I'm a very naturally gifted patient person.
No, me either. That was one of my husband and I are like notoriously like, that's one of our worst things is that we're both really impatient people.
And I'm a planner. So like, can you give me something to plan on, please?
Yep. And a doer. Like we're such I'm a real doer. And, that was like such a big spiritual lesson for both of us was just like how to let that go. Like
I can't imagine what the day will feel like. And I think about this a lot. Even if they're not with me forever.
Right.
And if they are, like, I can't imagine the day that I'm no longer a foster parent and I'm no longer wondering what will happen.
Yeah.
Because even if it's the thing I fear, like what happened in November when he left, part of me felt relief. I mean, I was deeply grieving and I was numb, but like part of me felt like, I know how this ends now.
Right.
I had been anticipating and wondering and going through the motions and worrying and thinking and saying like, how am I going to move on from this? And, and same thing had happened with my previous foster child when she left. And when she left, it was heartbreaking and I did not know how I would get through it. And I did. And a lot of my healing actually came from pouring myself into my little boy and, picking myself up and moving on with him and saying that wasn't a ending. Like that wasn't how our story was supposed to end. She wasn't supposed to be with me.
Right.
And like just moving on that way. And I don't know how I'll do that if they leave. I really don't know what that looks like. I think part of why I have these like this desire to have my own child and like know that like no one's ever going to take that baby away from me. That like it would just be such a different experience. Like even doing it solo, like I've already been doing it solo. So like, no question there. I can do it, but imagine like how different it would be to not have anybody needing to approve what I do.
Yes.
Not having to have court, not having to have home visits, not having to have visits, not having to, fight with doctors because they need certain approvals and wait for approvals from other people to get services in place. Like, I just can't imagine how much easier it would be to be a parent in that way. And I don't even know what that would feel like. Part of me thinks it's never going to come, and I called the guardian ad litem a couple of weeks ago and I was like, can you just tell me that this is going to end one day? Yeah. Because like, I'm starting to feel like this is never going to end. And she's like, I see why you think that. And it will end at some point. And I'm like, when? She's like, I don't know.
Right.
Me either. Like, I just want to know. I just want a timeline.
Yeah. I know. It's maddening. And I felt that exact same way. And after it happened, like, I cannot even tell you the relief that I felt. And then I was exhausted for like a year. I was just like, because you're holding so much for so long. And like, you have to be strong and you cannot just like break down. You've got to just keep going. Yeah. And man, it took a while for my husband and I both to just be able to let go and release all that stress and all of that worry and all of that stuff. So it will end. It will.
Yeah.
And
I just
it will
don't know how it's going to
amazing.
end.
And you don't know how it's going to end, but like, it's
like one hurdle after another. Like, it just feels like I'm just counting down to like the months, and I have this like hypothetical timeline that I've built in my head.
Right.
So like, cause I have to like comprehend it somehow.
Right. What is the timeline? Share the timeline in your head. I'm curious.
Sure. If it goes according to my plan or what I'm thinking in my head, we have court in September. I think I know how that's going to go. And they're going to give it about 60 to 90 days. It would normally be 30 to 60 days, but they're thinking 60 to 90 days because of ICWA. So give it a little bit more time. See, this is the thing with ICWA. Everything that you do gets just a little bit more, like a little bit more time, a little bit more help, a little bit more support, more active efforts is what they call it.
Okay.
So probably 60 to 90 days. So that's, to October to November to December. Oh, here's the problem. It's the holidays. And you know how things happen during the holidays. They just don't happen during the holidays. So, court doesn't happen and professionals don't do things as well because everybody's out and busy. And so I don't know, let's get into 2025. Like maybe we'll motion to terminate rights in like January, February. If what's happening now continues to happen, right? There's also the possibility that things turn around. So if that happens in January, February, and they try to get a court date for that hearing, which could be days. I was a CASA before I was a foster parent, and I sat through a TPR hearing for one of my kids, and it was a 4-day hearing.
Say what CASA is.
Court-appointed special advocate.
Yes. Okay.
So I sat through their TPR hearing, and it was 4 days long. So, getting 4 days on a court docket takes a long time to get. So That could
Why
be,
was it 4 days? Was it a trial as opposed to
it
just
was,
a judge making a determination?
yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Uh-huh.
Yeah. So that took 4 days. And, if it's going to, I assume the way that this case has gone, that everything is going to be contested.
Mm-hmm.
So I would assume that if they did go to trial for that, it wouldn't be until like May of next year. And then we need to factor in like an appeals process, which can take up to a year. So now we're in 2026.
Oh my God.
Um, and then, yeah, and then
Jesus.
you got to wait for an adoption date. You got to negotiate adoption
Yeah.
terms.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I don't anticipate this ending anytime soon.
Right. Right. Yeah. Thank you for walking us through that.
Yeah. And I mean, by
And
then, by 2026, little brother will be turning 4, and little sister will be turning 3.
yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's a long time in foster care.
It is a long time. And when do you decide to, if you can, to get a lawyer? Like, it was suggested to us to not get you don't get a lawyer because it's looked at as too aggressive and
Yes,
it's
I've
too,
heard this.
however,
Yeah.
my feeling at a certain point was, you know what? This is my child at this point. Like, I need
I
to
know.
fight for my child, and like,
Yeah.
no one is in this equation for me and for
Yeah.
and it's a dicey thing because I know it's all about reunification. But when that child doesn't know any other home for the
Yeah.
last 2 years, the last 3 years, it becomes sort of like, I don't know. I'm just curious
I
about
know.
your
I
thoughts
don't
about
know.
that.
And honestly,
Yeah.
financially, like I just can't do it.
Right.
Like
Hmm.
I don't know how I would do that. I'm a single parent of,
Yeah.
I make good money. I have a good life. We have a good home, but
Hmm.
like I just cannot spend thousands of dollars. And here's the thing. I'm not going to spend thousands of dollars fighting a system that doesn't want me to have them, because like I
Hmm.
don't understand who else would be there if not the parents. Who else? Because I don't understand, like a lot of why I wouldn't hire an attorney either is because of ICWA. Like I'm never going to win that.
Right.
I'm not native, and I fully understand why we have ICWA in place. I understand. I know that our country's history is abysmal and sad
Hmm.
and terrible, and I know why it's in place.
Hmm.
So I'm not going to fight that, and
Right.
and
Right.
I'm not going to fight against reunification either, because that's also something I'm not going to win, and
Right.
like, and so part of me is like, I can ride this out, and I never want to look my kids in the eye one day and say, yeah, I fought to get you away from your parents, because like
Right.
I couldn't say that to them, I
Right.
don't,
Right.
at this point.
However,
Yeah.
devil's advocate, and I'm sorry to
Yeah.
interrupt, but
No, go
if
ahead.
it's unsafe for them to
Yes.
be
Yes.
there,
And that's where I'm letting the system. I don't fully trust it, but I'm
yeah.
letting the system play out,
Uh-huh.
because
Uh-huh.
and I consulted with attorneys back in November when they were trying to send him home really quickly, and
Uh-huh.
there was nothing I could do at that point. And that's what the attorney told me. There was nothing I could do at that point.
Okay.
And so I was loud and honestly not always the most polished version of myself. And I'm sorry, I'm never going to be a professional foster parent in that regard. Like, no one trains you how to do that. No one trains you how to separate this legal system from your emotions over these children you're raising.
Right. Right.
I'm never going to be good at that, because it's all intertwined. And, I
Mm.
read a statement actually during a hearing, and I cried through the whole thing, but the judge let me read it. And I was so appreciative that she let me read it, because I knew that like it didn't necessarily matter like what I
Hmm.
said, but I
Hmm.
needed to be said. And I
Yeah.
wish the parents had heard it, because they weren't on court, of course. But
Right.
I wish they had heard it, because I just want them to know what their kids are going through.
Uh-huh.
And but I was glad I said it, and I was glad I said it on the record, because that was all I could do at that time. And all I could do was be loud for them. And
Uh-huh.
I was. And then, I got myself in a little bit of trouble being pretty loud. But like I said,
Hmm.
I was at the point where I was about to lose the most important thing to an unsafe situation. And I really did not care. Like,
Right.
like scold me, fire me from being a foster parent, do all you want. Like, I don't need to be a foster parent. I have a full-time job.
Hmm.
So like if you don't want someone to advocate and fiercely advocate loudly for these kids,
Right.
then I'm not your girl, So I'm not gonna play this game. So I was as loud as I could be. At the end of the day, things did work out in a way that
Hmm.
was safe for the children, and they are back home. And
Hmm. Hmm.
I groveled and did all the apologies I had to do to get them back here.
Uh-huh.
And I played the game, and I continue to play the game. But I'll be loud if I have to, and I'll be
Right.
annoying.
Right.
So there's only so much I can do, but I don't want to fight a system that is against me.
Hmm.
Um, all I want to do is make sure that the kids are getting what they need. And right
Hmm.
now they are, they're getting
Yeah.
their services. They're in a safe home. They're going to daycare, they're shielded from what I'm seeing,
Yep.
for the most part, so that's all that I can do right now. Um, it's hard, but if I'm going to spend thousands of dollars on anything, it's going to be
Hmm.
them, and it's going to be
Yeah.
my family, and it's going to be the baby that I have, biologically. Like, I just don't want to fight a system that I can't win. And
Hmm.
it's really sad that foster parents feel so powerless, but
Hmm.
the legislation that keeps getting passed is, again, repeating that we are nothing to the system.
Yeah. I
They
know.
need us so desperately, but we are nothing to them. And it's wild. It's wild that we sign up for this abuse, because that's what it is. But we do it for the kids so that they don't have
Hmm.
to.
Right.
Um, but we are
Right.
abused. We are abused
Oh God.
regularly and consistently.
Thank you for your candor. I mean, really, thank you. Thank
Yeah,
you. Because it's really
it's a toxic relationship.
yes, it's toxic. Yes. It's
Yeah.
like, when I was going into it, I was like, okay, I'm entering into like an alcoholic relationship right now. And
Yes.
the county is the
Yes.
alcoholic. Like I have to just remember, and I'm a long-term member of a program for friends and family of alcoholics. So
Yeah.
I was just like, I have to work my program around just the
Yes.
county because the county is a big alcoholic and I know
Yeah.
what they're like. I
Yeah.
gotta, yeah.
Yeah.
So
You have
it's,
to learn, and it's hard because like you love these kids and you just want the best for them. And I'm not here to steal anybody's baby. I don't
right.
want to do that. Like, I just want what's best for them. And it's a really hard line to walk because foster parents can be painted so evilly, and then we can be
Hmm.
painted so saintly. And
Yes.
I am both of those things, I'm sure, like
Right.
I'm only a human. Like, and I think part of what foster care asks of foster parents is to like transcend being human. And I just can't do that.
Yes.
Like, I
Yes.
wish I could. I wish I could turn off the emotion when I need to. I wish I could stay detached, but also get too attached. But
Right.
but not so attached that you want to adopt them. Like, we don't want you to do
Right.
that. Like,
Right. But if we need you to, then we do
yes,
want
be
that.
there, be there, be there as an option. Can you stay on the back burner but also not want it?
Right.
Like, and it's like, how do I do that? How do
It's
I do that?
unrealistic. Yeah.
So I'm
Yeah.
constantly beating myself up. Like, I feel guilty for wanting
Yeah.
them, and I
Of
feel
course.
guilty, for having anger towards the system and the bio parents. But I
Yeah.
also feel empathy, and I'm also
Yes.
really sad for my kids for what they're going through, and I hate it. I hate it for them.
Yeah.
I came from a very traditional upbringing,
Hmm.
parents that I'm very much so still very close to and were very present in my childhood. And so seeing this, it's like, I know what it should be.
Yeah.
So it's heartbreaking, but I also, at the end of the day, like, I mean, I'm a little selfish. Like, I love them and I don't want to see them go.
Right.
I want to see them have a really good shot at a really good life. And I think I can give that to them.
Right.
It's not going to come easy. And, it's going to be a lot of work and a lot of therapy and a lot of services and a lot of my own mental shifts and adjusting
Hmm.
to, how I communicate to them, and how we involve their parents in the future, and, what that looks like, and
Right.
how things are explained to them. And that, I can't even think about that right now. fully because I'm like, I don't even know if we're going to get there. So like,
Right.
you know, granted, like coming to a close in the case would be one thing, but then that opens up this whole new obstacle of how do we speak to our kids? How do we honor their origins? You know, like
Right.
how do you take this weighty task and make sure that you do it justice for them?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
it's like it's a lot. It's coming at you from every angle of the
Yeah.
guilt and the heaviness and the like responsibility that you feel towards these kids.
Yeah.
And I'm the one up at night thinking about it. So
That's right.
like,
That's
you
right.
know,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. And you're doing the best you can. And that's
yeah,
all you can do. That's what we can do as humans. We can do the
yeah,
best that we can. You
yeah.
know, you're not superhuman. You're a person and
Yes.
you're doing the best you can. And it sounds like you're doing an amazing job.
Thank you.
Really.
I'm trying.
Yeah.
A lot of coffee helps
Yeah.
and therapy.
Yeah. No kidding. Right. Um, before I let you go, just wondering if you have any words of wisdom or insight for anyone who might be interested in embarking on this journey,
Yeah.
but hasn't taken the plunge yet.
Yeah.
What would you say to them?
Hmm. You know, I don't think this is going to sound bad at first, but I don't think I would. I don't know if I would have gone into this knowing everything that I know now. So maybe
Mm.
ignorance is key in this. You know, I joke that I was very idealistic when I started, right? And part of me still has some of those ideals, but I've also, I've been beaten down a little bit.
Hmm.
At the end of the day, though, the kids are why. You know, you have to
Yeah.
have a pretty strong reason to keep putting up with the abuse and the toxic cycles and the pressure and the stress and the emotion. And it's the kids because if I can take that from them, I will do it every day.
Hmm.
So that's
Yeah.
why.
Yeah. I got you. I got you. I hear you loud and clear. And it's true. And um I'm just wondering, and now I know I should end it there because that was a perfect place to end, but I have to, you're so interesting to talk to, and you just have such a wealth of experience that I don't want to let you go.
Yeah,
And I know you probably have to go.
no, it's okay.
Um, but when you were coming into it, like, how
Mhm.
did you always know that you wanted to do something like this? Or was it like, oh, I don't have a partner and I'm looking for, well, no, because you weren't even looking to adopt at that point. You were just
No,
fostering, right?
yeah.
How did you decide that you wanted to do that?
It's kind of funny. I moved to Colorado. I'm from Maryland originally, from the East Coast.
Hmm.
I moved to Colorado in 2017, and I was really just like trying to build a life for myself here.
Hmm.
I moved for my job, and it was pretty lonely. I didn't know anybody in Colorado, and I was doing therapy at the time, and actually my therapist at the time. I have a different therapist now, but the therapist at the time was like, hey, have you ever looked into like, I wanted to do something with kids. I've always loved kids. I have three nephews and I have a niece, and I just, I've always loved kids. And so she was like, have you looked into being a CASA, a court appointed special advocate? And I was like, no. And, I kind of thought about it, and I did. I went through the whole process. I became a CASA. I was a CASA for 2 years. Um, but I just saw so much in those two
Hmm.
cases that I was on that I just felt like I wasn't doing enough, and I wanted to do more. And then part of me too, I always wanted to be a mom. And at this
Hmm.
point, I think I was 29 at this point, and I was like, you know what? Like I've always wanted to be a mom. COVID hit, and I was like, well, it's really hard to date during a global pandemic. Um, what's keeping me from being a mom in some capacity? I have the time, I have the income. I had to
Hmm.
buy a house, which I did, and so I had the extra bedroom.
Hmm.
So that took some time. I really had to get things in a row.
Right.
Um, I did the training, I did the background checks, I did the classes, I did the home studies, and so I was actually licensed. I want to say it was the fall of 2021.
Hmm.
So I've been a foster parent for going on 3 years now. So I got licensed, and I was just like so excited. I was like, just give me a placement. Everyone's like, don't be excited. That means a kid is going into foster care, and that's a bad thing. And I was like, I know, but
Mm.
I'm just so ready to help, like
Right.
eager. And so, and I didn't get any calls, and I was like, no one's
Mhm.
calling, no one's calling. So I ended up like perusing the portal every day, and I saw Nevaeh, which is my love. She is my first daughter. Um, and so I was like, I'm interested. She was 16 with her own baby, and I was like, it's kind of the best of both worlds. Like, I get to have that baby fixed, but I can help her be a good mom and give her a safe like spot to land. And I was so like excited. She came and she lived with me, and she hasn't had a great track record with foster parents, and so we became really close. And she kind of had this brief period of like, you're doing everything for me and helping me out, and I don't trust it. And she left, and
Mm, mhm.
she came back later, and we're so close now. It's like even closer, and it's like the best foster care ending that could be. She's almost 19 now. She actually has two kids. She has a second baby, but she's got her own apartment and she's working full time. And I'm just so proud of her. But yeah, that's kind of how I got into it. So it was just really like I knew I wanted to be a mom. I
Yeah.
wasn't going to wait. I saw that there was an opportunity, and it was
Mhm.
just like putting your foot like one step in front of the other,
Right.
and going through the process of getting certified. And then all of a sudden you're like, you had a kid at your doorstep, and you
Yeah.
kind of just like get sucked into this world, and it becomes part of your identity, and your friends
Yeah.
are foster parents. And it's like, we're this crazy group of people that's always like rotating supplies and doing respite for each other's kids. And I love it. I love that part of it.
Oh, that's beautiful.
I
That's
really
so
do.
cool. I
Yeah,
love that. I love that community. That's really it does take a village, and
it does.
that's just so cool.
And if that's the best thing I get from it, like that's a lot. So
Yeah. Yeah, that's amazing. You're amazing. I would
thank you.
love, love, love to reconnect with you at some
Yes.
point and hear
Yes.
how
I'll
your
keep you posted.
story
It
evolved
might
and
be a couple of years, but
yeah. Well, I'm just wishing you all the best and the
thank
best for those
you.
children. And thank you so, so much.
Thank
We're going to say
you.
goodbye now, but you and I are going to stay on for a minute.
Okay.
So thank you for being on the show.